banning coats in the name of social justice, the Vagina Monologues minus the vagina, and a group of Notre Dame University boys standing up for women next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Dr. Duke Show Thanksgiving edition. Every week we cover the stories impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses across the nation. Greetings to all of our listeners, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Google Play or anywhere else you can access podcasts and never miss an episode. Coming up at the end of the show, we have a special treat for you, so stick around for that little surprise. But first, I want to bring in Katie Petrick for the top education stories of the week. Katie.
It's getting cold in England, and it looks like it's going to be a little bit colder for some students who are now banned from wearing a certain type of winter jacket because apparently it's expensive and that's not fair or something. In Woodchurch High School, Birkenhead, England, it's in Northwest England, a letter was sent home to parents from the head teacher, Rebecca Phillips, saying that the coats made by Canada Goose and Montclair were banned. Now, these are very expensive coats, as you can see. I guess they run up to $1,200 per coat. And the head teacher said it's going to be banned after Christmas because these coats cause a lot of inequality between our pupils. They stigmatize students and parents who are less well off and struggle financially. Phillips said that this is her kind of attempt to poverty-proof the school, so far, the response has been well received by the parents. Yeah, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. When you listen to the media on this, all these moms and dads are gushing about this. They think this is absolutely fantastic. But do you understand two things? Number one, this is a microcosm of how they're teaching your kids the subject matter. They are poverty-proofing your kids' classrooms. They are poverty-proofing math. In other words, we're not going to let the really high-achieving math kids get ahead because that's making the other kids, stigmatizing the other kids. It's a lack of equity, as she would say. If your kid can read at a really high level and the other kids can't, guess what? Your kid is getting poverty-proofed. He is not going to be allowed to read at a high level because it's going to make the other kids feel unequitable. This argument, and this is in American schools now too, the argument that the primary purpose of school is social engineering. And if you're going to social engineer coats, where does this stop, right? If you can't wear a certain coat because it costs too much money, what about the half the kids who have braces in class and on their teeth and the other half can't? There's no way you can argue to me that wearing a coat and having a little more warmth in the wintertime is akin to having a group of kids with typically bad English teeth versus those who get braces and have American-looking nice teeth. And so consequently, where does this stop? There's nothing you can't censor now. There's nothing you can't stop them from doing. Tests. The degree to which tests show differences in student achievement is the degree to which tests and homework assignments and in-class assignments and writing assignments and research papers, the fact that you're giving grades suggests a difference in equity. So what's the best way to fix that? To level it all out. This is, my friends, nothing more than outcome-based socialist thinking. I get it, right? Moms and dads are unhappy because the have-not moms are annoyed that kids who can do things do it. And our response to that is to prohibit it from happening. This is exactly the wrong educational message to be sending to kids because it also entitles them, right? What about in terms of lunches? Nobody's allowed to bring their own lunch anymore because somebody's got goose liver pate. What are the English? Something like that. Something like that the English would... Haggis, right? Well, that's Scottish,
England's close to Scotland. You bring a big pile of haggis. Right? Versus the other poor bastard who's eating fish and chips, right? So consequently, we've got to eliminate all those differences as well. This is an exercise in what American and Western culture, what our schools have become, are utterly places where you can simply social engineer everything into equity by gunpoint.
And this is not the first thing that has been done with this school. This school specifically, about 46% of the 1,427 student body come from a disadvantaged background. And 2 years ago, they made it so their school bags where there was a compulsory school bag that had to be purchased to reduce costs after parents complained that kids were demanding branded rucksacks, as they're called, rucksacks. But here's my thing. It's exactly where you're pointing to. If the kid is demanding it and the parents turning to the teachers and making the school, well, I can't control my kid clearly. I can't tell my kid no. So can you just make a thing so that the kids aren't allowed to bring it and then it makes my job,
right, that's
not necessary?
That's it. And 25 years ago, I made this argument. I made the argument, why don't we go back to just school uniforms? This is going to get rid of all these problems. And it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as punishing certain families at the expense of other kids. When you have a typical uniform format, and you could even provide them, do it with all the money wasted in public schools. Provide moms and dads with two copies, two hangers, two sets of uniforms every year for the kids. They all wear the exact same thing, the exact same pants, tops, skirts, if that's where you're going to go. Whatever you want to do it that way. That's different. What you're saying then from the outset is every kid that goes to our school is going to be outfitted this way. It's neat, it's tidy, it takes away distractions. They're doing it exactly the wrong way. And here's the other thing. Why stop at just what the kids have on when they come to class? What about the cars that moms and dads drive kids to school in, right? I mean, if one mom's got a Mercedes, the other one's driving a Yugo, that's unacceptable. What about the fact that off campus, because these schools are already monitoring these kids' social media accounts, paying attention to what they're doing on Instagram. So what if, on Instagram, you're wearing a $1,000 sweater and some other kid doesn't have that? Where does the academic achievement? I predict that within 20 years, if nothing dramatically changes, we may almost get to the point where we're eliminating high school athletics and middle school athletics because of the differences in what the kids get when kids being out of class to go to sporting events, kids having uniforms and all this money dedicated to those kinds of abilities, the social stratus that this makes, the cliques that this breeds in high school, middle school, and college camp. Maybe we got to get rid of those things because they're not equal. And what if there's already inequality between football players and basketball players and rugby players and rowing people who row for an extracurricular, right?
It's called crew.
It's called crew. People who are crewing up and down the Thames, right? There's already irregularities there in the amount of status and the money and the kind of scholarships that are and are not available. If you don't stop this now, we're going to get to a point where every aspect of your kid's education, if you send them to public schools, that includes what happens at home, what you feed them at home. That includes what the recreational things are, how you dress them at home, what you allow them, the technology that you allow them to have. That seems to be a big one, too. If your kid has access to much more technology or greater bandwidth or much more internet hours or usage or data, right, at home than a poor kid does, how do you justify this? It's none of the school's business. It's none of the state's business. The fact that we're allowing this to happen, moms and dads think this is a good idea, shows you how they have bought the lie that the primary purpose of your kids' schools is anything and everything other than education.
All right, from England, we go down to Australia, where you will never find a teaching job because they have banned sarcasm at Australian universities. And I want to say this is not a new story. It was actually reported a few years ago, but what's new is the former Chief Justice of Australia, so high up, Robert French. He's going to be doing a review of freedom of speech at universities. There has been an audit that has been going on for a couple years now from the Institute of Public Affairs. And they, in the audit, they've revealed that 8 out of the 42 universities, which is about 19% of the universities, have a standalone policy on freedom of expression. Just 8 out of the 42, as mandated by the Higher Education Support Act of 2003. So, whoops, some people are not following the rules. Now, the audit found that 80% of the universities have a red flag rating, and this means that campuses are hostile to free speech. Now, to us, this seems like a no-brainer. You've been in the university system long enough to know exactly what's happening. Some of the examples in Australia is Murdoch University in Perth. Its introduced bylaws impose a $50 fine on members who use insulting languages. Okay, I don't know what insulting, air quotes, language is, but you can get a $50 fine. The University of Queensland lists sarcasm as a form of harassment and bullying under its discrimination policy. And Western Sydney University policy classifies sarcasm as bullying in addition to teasing.
Yeah, what surprises me, none of this surprises me, by the way. The one surprise in everything you just said to me is that the Aussies have figured out to start fining kids. That is an idea that some idiot in America is going to adopt really soon. Every time you have a hate speech statement, every time you say something that makes one of your students upset, every time a professor says something that triggers a student, we're going to dock you $50, $100 from your paycheck. I guarantee you that that's an idea whose time is coming. As far as sarcasm goes, the one saving, redeeming grace in all of this is our kids are too badly educated and entirely ignorant to even understand sarcasm when they hear it 9 out of 10 times. The fact is we don't teach kids what satire is. We don't teach kids what sarcasm is. We don't teach kids any of this stuff, right? I mean, you give kids a satirical essay about why Jonathan Swift, why we need to eat babies because there's too many of them. Half the class is going to think this is a good idea. The other half's going to be offended, and no one's going to recognize that this is satire or sarcasm. Sarcasm, by definition, is what's the word I'm looking for here? It's the last recourse of the teacher. It's the last thing the teachers can do. Anything you write on a student's paper can get you into trouble, however you phrase it. God knows you better stop emailing your kids. have people at your office hours, have other people standing around so they're watching you. Sarcasm is really the last thing we as teachers can do to tell our kids how utterly, utterly clueless they are about the realities of life. And of course, now they want to get rid of sarcasm too. So by all means, go ahead. The good news, as I said before, is there's not a kid out there who even knows what the word means.
That's true, because they don't read anything, so that's positive for you especially.
Right. I'm going to keep on keeping on with the sarcasm train.
Yes. All right. So, back in my day, when I went to university the first time, the Vagina Monologues was the man-fighting show that every woman was told, you need to go see this and you need to cheer during it. But now it's become yet another example of invalidating transgenders because Vagina Monologues doesn't include men. Women's Resource Center at Eastern Michigan University decided to pull the show after survey respondents opposing the production consistently indicated they were concerned that the play centers on cisgender women, that the play's version of feminism excludes some women, including trans women, and that overall the Vagina Monologue lacks diversity and inclusion. So it excludes men who think they are women.
Yeah, this is an amazing story because I'm with you. When I was first started teaching, the Vagina Monologues were all the rave. A bunch of angry women standing up on stage talking about their girl parts, right? And I always love the title, the Vagina Monologues, because this is typical feminism. It's not a dialogue. It's not vaginas dialoguing with penises. It's not vaginas dialoguing with other vaginas. It's just droning vaginas, right? The droning vagina telling you its own vaginalness, right? Giving you its own vagina code. And woman after woman after, very tedious, but every university was putting this on, requiring freshmen to attend this stuff. Total garbage. Now the irony of intersectionality is killing feminism. One reason to like intersectionality, the only reason to like intersectionality is it's killing feminism. But you ask yourself again, when you see women feminists, it's feminists who made this decision. I guarantee you, it's not some straight white guy, cisgendered white guy who decided to get rid of the Vagina Monologues. It was other feminists now who have bought hook, line, and sinker the stupid argument that men who think they're women are women. Those men have penises, not vaginas. Therefore, the Vagina Monologues are exclusive. So it took 30 years to get academics to realize that the Vagina Monologues were utterly exclusive, right? They excluded anything but vaginas. But it took men who have penises to convince women, right? And so the whole thing, it shows you the absurdity. Real quick, my anecdote about the Vagina Monologues. I was teaching at Oklahoma State University back in the mid-2006 and 2007. And I remember that they had Vagina Monologue. Valentine's Day, they renamed V-Day, as in Vagina Day. So Valentine's Day, where boys and girls get each other gifts, that's too heterosexual. So they created V-Day, Vagina Day. And what they did is they had a performance of the Vagina Monologues. A group of undergraduate girls had T-shirts on that literally said, "Pussies Unite" on them. And they were handing out on the campus quad at Oklahoma, this is the Bible Belt, ladies and gentlemen, handing out on the campus quad vagina-shaped chocolate suckers. Chocolate suckers on a stick, right, which is its own gruesome image, in the shape of vaginas. And they were actually handing them out to people who walked by as an act of radical progressivism, right? Have a chocolate vagina, right? And then, I'll never forget it, I had a group of girls who got so mad they actually complained to the university that some of the fraternity boys were ripping the wrappers off the vagina suckers and lewdly eating them in front of the feminists. So you hand a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old college boy a chocolate vagina on a stick, and then you get mad when he lovingly, well, actually rather crassly devours that chocolate vagina. And you complain in the name of feminism to the university. That's how stupid all of this is. I gotta write a book about this.
They're all a bunch of
They're
all a bunch of suckers.
And here actually is that T-shirt. I had forgotten. It's on the back. It's got the 2004. That's how I'm getting old. It wasn't 2006 or 8. It's 2004. And it's a T-shirt honoring the Vagina Monologues. You can barely see it. See the Vagina Monologues there. It was all the rage. And it's got a list there, 2 columns of all the girls who participated in this. And on the front, as I promised you, you've got 2 girls, 2 women, one whispering in another's ear. And it's very faint, but right below it, it says in cursive script, "Pussies Unite." And there's actually kind of a bit of a heartwarming story with this particular, and I kept this all this years, right? 14 years I've kept this, because I knew that somewhere down the road I was going to want to tell this story, and no one would believe it unless I had proof. Look at how tiny this little girl was, by the way. I remember her directly. Her name was Rachel. Very sweet kid, and she was a sophomore at the time. And she found herself in my Shakespeare class at Oklahoma State University. And over the course of a semester, she went from being a really angry feminist radical. She had bought into all that campus stuff. She was using henna on her hands and wearing weird bandanas and had become really kind of a radical, funky feminist chick. One semester of Shakespeare where I just kept asking her questions, put the book in front of her and challenge, I let Shakespeare basically challenge her assumptions about gender, about politics, about power, about God, all of it. And over the course of that semester, I just watched her change. I got this t-shirt from her. She was part of this group the first semester on her campus. By the end of end of May, when we were done together with our class, she came up and she handed me this shirt, and she said, "Thank you, Dr. Pastor. Your class, really Shakespeare, showed me that what I was thinking, what I was being told, wasn't really true." So I've held on to this as kind of a keepsake of perhaps one of the few really, really good things I've been able to accomplish as a professor. This young girl walked away from that kind of radical, nihilistic, feminist stuff and became a really, really solid student and a great all-around kid. So there is hope.
Because of things that you say, now everyone must take diversity and inclusion courses. This is happening at Georgia Southern University. They're going to be introducing mandatory curriculum to first and second year students. I guess they won't see the Vagina Monologues, but they will have to be taught diversity and inclusion. And all of this is happening because the Student Government Association passed a diversity and inclusion resolution. So basically now, because of a group of student activists say so, the university is caving to everyone.
So this is the beta test, right? The first thing was to concede that the entire curriculum had to be overhauled to incorporate minority authors, women authors, gay authors, lesbian authors. No, but everybody who understands universities knew that was just the first step. This was never about equality. So what's the next phase now that we're entering in college campuses? The entire gen ed program of your kids' college experience. Remember when you went to college and you really, really couldn't even take your major courses. You wanted to be an accountant, you wanted to be a chemist or a pharmacist. You really couldn't focus on that until your junior year. The first 2 years of your college experience, and this is still true today, are your gen ed classes. Those core courses that you had used to be called the liberal arts. Now they're called the progressive arts because they dropped liberalism in the name of radical progressivism. These are the progressive arts courses, right, that your kids have to take. So your kid wants to be a pharmacist. He's got to take an English literature course. He's got to take an art history course. He's got to take a course in the philosophy department, a sociology course. Here's the dangerous thing now. This is half your kids' credits. This is 60 credits at least out of 120 to graduate. This is tens and tens of thousands of dollars you have to spend on these courses that your kids don't really want to take, but they have to take before they can take their majors courses. And now, under the guise of progressive revisionism, all your kids' gen ed courses in 10 years are going to be social justice left-wing activist courses. No more taking this course in Shakespeare and that course in Renaissance art or that course in ancient Greek theater, where you had at least a broad array to pick from. You could decide what you wanted to take, those areas that were the most interesting or exciting to you. No, not anymore. Georgia Southern has decided now, the kids have decided that what you have to do for 60 credits, for tens of thousands of dollars, is take the same stupid diversity course in 30 different classes, right? 30 different classes of the same thing. Feminism in theater, feminism in art history, Marxism in sociology, Marxism in biblical studies. It's going to be the same narrow left-wing courses. Gen Ed now has just been killed. Killing Gen Ed in the name of radically using 2 full years of your kids' college experience to indoctrinate them politically. That's where we are.
And you have to understand, again, it was the Student Government Association that came up with this resolution. They could make whatever resolutions they want. And the university doesn't have to do anything about them regarding curriculum. There is a curriculum committee on this campus. I was on it at my university because I'm a dork. But it's the curriculum committee that would send it up to the faculty senate. It should not be this way, but this is what we're going to, just as you said.
Yeah, and that's the second really alarming part of the story that you wisely pointed out. It's this idea that kids are making the policy now. The professors, the chancellors, the deans, the people with the master's degrees and the PhDs in their subject matter, they are no longer able to decide what the kids should learn. This is a group of angry kids who have been utterly politicized by things like Common Core in their high schools, who set foot on campus and demand radical change. and your spineless, gutless, nutless academic administrators turn over everything they want to them.
And that's what happened right here, because the provost and vice president for academic affairs, Carl Reiber, said, "We would like to integrate diversity and inclusion throughout the curriculum to reinforce the importance of this at many levels of the curriculum, not just a single course." Because right now, according to the resolution, they have one course that they're putting, it's called LEAD 3900, and they have no idea what it'll be, other than to say that the skills that this class provides are universal and can help determine the character of the student rather than contribute to the scholastic content.
Rather than contribute to academic knowledge. In other words, now we're not just going to have one of those courses. We're going to have upwards of half every course, Georgia Southern says, will have to have that in it. But we're going to have all that gen ed stuff, all that stuff is now going to have to be non-academic specific.
Yeah, and every credit at Georgia Southern is about $177. We don't know how many credits, but if this one course, LEAD 3900, that'd be an extra $531 for absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and again, because the one way you can make sure kids graduate the same is not to hold them to any academic standard. It is to make them the same politically. That's easy to do. Dumb it down, require less real work, less real subject matter, less actual, genuine diversity of courses. And this is what I love about diversity on college campuses. It applies to everything but diversity of thought. The more we allow 19-year-olds to decide what we're going to teach them, the more the courses are going to be the same course, because they don't know why they need a course in Shakespeare. They don't know why they need a course in early American history might be useful for them. They don't know why that as future citizens of this country, they might need an accounting course that would help them figure out how to balance a checkbook or figure out a mortgage. They don't know why they need those things. All they've been taught at the high school level is they need more diversity. They need more of the same thing. And so you allow them then, and look, let's be clear. The idea that we're allowing these kids to do this, if these kids all came into class demanding more courses in Ku Klux Klanism or demanding more courses in Christianity, we need more courses. Still, almost 80% of Americans identify as Christians. The influx of incoming freshmen demand more Christian-themed courses on college campuses. There is no way the administrators would give it to them. The administrators are doing this because this is what they want to happen. But again, and this is the really warning for you all out there, it starts now with the gen ed courses. Those courses are going to be mandated to be primarily diversity courses. That's half your kids' tuition. That's half your kids' college experience. But you know as well as I do that it can't stop there, because then the argument becomes, well, after teaching kids as freshmen and sophomores that the only thing that really matters is diversity, is radical left-wing politics, then how do you allow them to go into their majors and not talk about it anymore? Now that chemistry class is going to have to incorporate those progressive values, and that biology class, it's going to have to fall back on what they learned as freshmen in their diversity classes. And again, and that's how you get arguments like you're getting in the colleges now, that biological sex doesn't mean anything anymore, that sex and gender are all culturally determined. And anybody who actually defaults to biology to talk about gender is a sexist pig. That's how this happens.
I wish they would have actually interviewed some of these kids before they passed this resolution. If the fellow activist students would have interviewed their peers, because we had a couple good students who actually said smart things on a college campus. We have sophomore Matthew Frost, who told Campus Reform that college is already expensive and stressful. I can't continue to pay for additional courses and spend valuable time sitting through courses where a professor is teaching people how to be kind to each other. Parents should be teaching that at home for free. So kudos, Mr. Frost.
Kudos to him. And of course, it's interesting that, of course, the small group of radical freshmen who demanded this didn't interview those kids.
Of course not.
They're not interested in that. The serious math-minded kid wasn't included in this. That kid who wants to become a premium journalist and wants to work on his writing on a serious level, he wasn't included in this either. It's all the same group of small, ethnically diverse radical kids who keep demanding this, and the rest of the college and the rest of the freshman body not going to consult them on this at all.
Yeah.
But I love what he said. One more course.
Yep.
On teaching, the only thing I would have added to this, one more, the last thing we need are more courses on teaching kids to be kind to each other from a perspective point of view, right? That's what he left out there. Because if you're not a progressive, it's not kind to rob kids of their education. If you're not a progressive, it's not kind to charge kids tens of thousands of dollars for the same course again and again. If you're not a progressive, it's not kind to argue that there is only one political way to view the world. It's not. That's unkind. Again, it's that lack of intellectual diversity that's destroying this country.
All right. Well, we have some professors who are destroying this country too, as they argue that civility, and you got to read all of the things, they argue civility upholds white supremacist, heteropatriarchal, capitalist power. I think they just tried to throw everything into that whole statement.
I don't see the word differently abled.
Oh, well.
So it upholds white supremacist, heteropatriarchal, right? Able-bodied capitalist, right? We can add that one, can't we?
Yeah, we could. I think it would make it it might still fit on that second line.
It's just word soup.
It is.
But notice what the implication of the story is, Katie, that when any radical liberal attacks anyone for any reason, and you say they've stepped out of line, then you're hetero, patriarchal, cisgendered, blah, blah, blah. All this is a way to indemnify themselves, right? And it only cuts one way. It cuts only for progressives. So, in other words, that civility is something that only a progressive can decide upon, which means the progressive can say anything he wants to you. The progressive can call you any kind of names that she can think of. And we've seen this 1,000 times on college campuses. On this show over the last year, how many times have we reported on college professors insulting their students, going on nasty tangents about Republicans or Christians or conservatives? That's civility. And whenever you call them on it, you can't fire me because I have tenure. That scold, that skank out in California, I forget what her name was, that professor, the one, I think it was Fresno State, who was wishing the rest of the Bushes, right? Remember her? You think about somebody like that, and the crasser things she says, the less civil things she says, the more she says, I am entitled to it by my free speech. She said, go screw off, basically. I'm entitled to this. And yet, these same professors are now saying, if you criticize her, you call her a skank, for instance, you criticize her, you criticize any aspect of the progressive program, that proves you're a racist. So again, this is Orwellian fascism, isn't it, in a way, that we who control the power in universities, we progressives, have utter carte blanche to say the nastiest things about you. If you protest or even suggest that maybe a little civility between us would be good, you're guilty of white supremacism, which allows you to say even more hateful things about you.
And if you want to look at the specific argument, it's coming from Johnny Williams and David Embrick. They're professors at Trinity College and the University of Connecticut, respectively, and they're making their argument in the article called Civility For Whom? And it depends, saying that much of the demands for civil behavior from faculty are actually calls for the civility with the whole word soup they put in there. So the calls for civility, and many of these calls are coming from college administrators, they're arguing, are usually directed at professors interrogating oppression in a manner displeasing to college and university administrations. In other words, stop picking on the sociology professors.
Interrogating oppression. That sounds... We will interrogate your impression. Mr. Oppression, how long have you been a pro-liberty candidate? Mr. Right? That's a bad German accent. But see,
it is, but
not a Nazi, that's why. Bad German accent. However, interrogating oppression. In other words, whenever we say something vile and incivil, whenever we, like Samantha Bee, refer to a member of the Trump family as a feckless C word, right? A feckless see you next Tuesday, that is us interrogating oppression. But when you come back at us and say, hey, maybe it's a nasty slur to use the C word when you're talking about a woman, that's patriarchal unfairness. Again, this is not a complicated story. It basically boils down to this. We're progressives. We can say anything we want, and when you criticize us, your criticism is exactly why we should say more of it. End of story.
Well, that was a good summation, because that's, basically what it does boil down to. All right, so we actually have a follow-up story to talk about. Last week, we talked about the, situation, if you will. It went national and international about little school district of Baraboo in Baraboo, Wisconsin, when we had 60 boys who got this prom photo taken, and it appeared that they may have been making a Nazi salute. So a follow-up to that is that the district administrator, Dr. Lori Miller, she sent a letter out to the parents and the teachers, the students, and the community members. In this letter, she says, regardless of the details of the photo or the intentions in the hearts of those involved, the truth is this is an image that has rightly been described as hateful, frightening, and disappointing.
So listen to what she said. This is the person running one of the main administrators at your kid's school, Baraboo. And this is a carbon copy of the men and women who run your schools across the country and across the whole Western world, evidently. Context doesn't matter. This is what we're teaching your kids. Context doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the mitigating circumstances are. It doesn't matter what the background noise is. It doesn't matter what the circumstances were to lead to this. This is horrible and evil, and we're going to treat it as if you meant it. How do you square that, by the way, with all of the sociological arguments about diversity? The diversity warriors on college campus keep telling us, your economic background determines how we should treat you. If you have a poor economic background, we can't hold you to the same standards as rich kids. If you're black or Hispanic or a ethnic minority, you have a whole series of context that holds you down and elevates white kids. We can't treat you the same, right? We have to pay attention to the context. If you're a woman or you're gay or you're lesbian or you're transgender, your context is so radically different than everybody else's that all we're allowed to consider is the context. But when it comes to a handful of boys doing the stupid salute because they were told to do so by the adult who took the picture, not even knowing what the word Nazi means, we're going to ignore all that context and treat your kids like Nazis. That's the fascism behind this. That's your double standard. It applies to certain kids and not to others. If what you wanted was genuine equality based on context, right? Because what matters is not what you and I do or say anymore. What we do, how hard we work, how hard we try, our ability in the classroom, that means nothing anymore to progressives. What matters is, what were your mom and dad like? What's your family income? What skin color are you? Who do you sleep with? Those are the only things we're allowed to consider when considering your academic performance, unless it's 60 white boys at a middle school raising their hands. At that point then, it doesn't matter what the context is. This should bother us as a country, but I'm kind of thinking it's not, any more than by banning certain kinds of coats or banning the word sarcasm in some of our schools. We are quickly entering an arena here where education is a tool of fascist oppression. If education does not allow you to become free to think what you want to think as an independent person, then it is nothing more than the ability to indoctrinate your kids. And it is unacceptable in education. Better not educate kids at all publicly than to educate them to all be the same kid.
Well, would you like to end on a good story?
I would like to end on some good story. Yes. What do you got for us?
All right. We have 80 male students who it's undergraduates and graduate students at Notre Dame University. And let's note that Notre Dame is a Catholic university.
Kind of.
Kind of. It used to be once upon a time. They are requesting a porn filter be put on campus Wi-Fi networks. In the school newspaper, The Observer, the 80 men signed a letter, an opinion editorial, and it was signed by undergraduates and graduates, as I said. And they state, as the men of Notre Dame, we request that the university implement a filter to make pornography inaccessible on the Notre Dame Wi-Fi networks. This filter would send the unequivocal message that pornography is an affront to human rights and catastrophic to individuals and relationships. We are calling for this action in order to stand up for the dignity of all people, especially women.
Yeah, now you can just see what the feminists are going to say, right? So good, first of all, congratulations, good for you, 80 boys. 60 boys being group condemned in Baraboo for something that they were asked to do by the person who took the photograph. Here you have 80 boys who have, on a Catholic campus, have stood up. Now, we know that this Catholic campus isn't a Catholic campus. This is the Catholic campus, Notre Dame, that invited the most pro-abortion president in American history to give a commencement address. This is the same president of Notre Dame University who defended a child-abusing cardinal, right? And basically said, let's not jump to conclusions, right? Let's not paint a molesting cardinal as a bad guy. So much so that one of Notre Dame's own students had to stand up and condemn the president for condoning the molestation of children. I find it very hard to believe that Notre Dame's large contingent of feminist academics, godless feminist academics, aren't going to see this as a way of suppressing women's rights. This is utterly patriarchal, right? How dare these boys presume to speak for women on campus? Who taught these boys that chivalry was still a thing, that men should be looking out for the sensibilities of women? Who taught them that? Where did these boys come off arguing that their own Catholic religious beliefs should get in the way of somebody else's pornography? God bless you, boys. The storm that's about to come your way from progressives on Notre Dame campus is going to be a thing to behold, but thank you, and I hope you stick to your guns. Okay. Oh, guns on a college campus?
You can't have that.
No, can't have that.
Well, there is one more positive to it. There were actually 68 female Notre Dame students who responded to the men's letter, and they emphatically supported it.
Co-opted. What are the these are co-opted with young girls who need more intersectionality. That's going to be the takeaway from this. Those boys need mandatory gender re-education, right?
Yes.
These are cisgendered white male boys primarily who need to learn that they don't get to tell women what they can and can't do. They don't get to speak for women because they have penises, unless unless they're transgendered, then suddenly they're women, then they can't speak. If all 80 of these boys with penises actually called themselves transgenders, that would pose a huge problem for the university. But I'm sure they're not, and that's the problem. These boys are going to have to be re-educated, and those 60 girls who supported those boys, they've been co-opted. They've been victims of patriarchy. They need to be taught how they should reject this, right, in the name of women's rights and equality.
And with that, head over to drdukeshow.com. Make sure you listen to the podcast version. We have it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all your favorite platforms. And if you could leave us a 5-star rating. Dr. Duke, as you learned today, does have a soul, and he really enjoys those nice, friendly comments. So make sure you give us a 5-star rating and leave a review.
And that does it for us this week on The Dr. Duke Show. If you like what you heard, share the podcast with your friends. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will see you next time. Killing me.
You're killing me, Smalls.
What do I got to say here?
Are you going to take time out to do a blooper thing ever?
Roll it, Mikey.
Here we go again. In fact, according to most historians, look at this. My first show and I'm already turning the book upside down. Well, we need to turn this country upside down, I'm here to tell you. So, anyway. You know, when you ask your average high school... Oh, I should have about 10 of these and then I'll probably be fine.
Parents, beware. Once upon a... What? I get the giggle. All right. Okay.
54 years ago this month, we lost a great... I want to say great president. Some people don't think he's a great president. 54 years ago this month, in 1960... Why would I say 63 if it's 54 years ago? All right. Okay.
Sometimes I feel like a nut.
If you see the picture here, if my producer was paying attention, he'd have that picture up here right now. There, thank you very much. He was sleeping at the wheel. Sorry about that, people. Oh, how we admire and adore and love and want to just kiss those little veterans of ours. Oh, don't put that in there.
Dan's ready to rock. Michael's ready to rock. Rosanna's ready to rock. I even feel Dr. Duke's support from down the hall. As one of the top Italian personalities on Freedom Project Media, I was feeling really good about that take, and now I got to get in the mood again. Just to maim a few. I just maimed that first sentence. Knock this out of the ballpark. Or isn't it racism to... Oh, the story right after sports. If you like outstanding videos, like the one you just saw.
I scream, you scream, we all scream for bigotry. Next. Killing. Hold on, let me get my laugh out on this one. Well, hello. Ha ha ha. Hey. Creepy. Danny. There's my boy. Flip to my boy. There he is. I sparkle. Come on, why did you start laughing at me? Nailed it.
All right, I'm ready whenever you are.
Well.
No. In the words of Michael Scott, no!
Can you guess what man-interrupting is? It's when a man interrupts a woman.
I couldn't have said it better myself, except I just did 2 minutes ago.
And what's the first rule of Fight Club?
Never talk about Fight Club.
What's the first rule of the Feminist Fight Club?
Always keep your mouth flapping about everything. Who do you think the bourgeoisie is, honey? That's for the highlight reel, the blooper reel. What's her superpower going to be? Wearing a tampon while getting a prostate exam? You think Shepard Smith talks like this on the set of Fox News? Oh, did I just appropriate rap? Did I just rap? You ain't woke, you a joke.
Just upset.
This is clearly ridiculous, and I'll tell you why it's ridiculous. We always wrap up the Dr. Duke Show with a subtle, mild sedative. God knows I need it. Take everything anybody with a PhD says with a grain of salt.
I shall
including
do
me.
Especially you.
Especially me.
I do every day.
Especially me.
That's all, folks. Okay.